Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. The end of the year is New Year, so I thought I would share some of the books I've been loving this year, particularly the top 10. So I have been reading 60 books this year. This will be like the top 1/6 of the whole thing. A little disclaimer, none of these books were published in 2018, at least I don't think so, I don't remember, but I don't think so. So if you're looking for books that are published in 2018, I'm afraid I can't help you. But if you're just looking for books in general to read, stick around as I go through 10 of these books. So let's start with number 10, shall we? We have The Dog by Joseph O'Neill. I don't think this is the kind of book that most people would know about, because I wouldn't have known about it if my sister's old school hadn't got a donation with this book in it, and my sister took it and I took it from her shelf. So this tells the story of a man who once worked in a law firm in New York and decides to leave his job as he moves to Dubai after his wealthy friend offered him a job in his family's company. Basically, his job description is to be the guard dog of their finances, so he rejects or signs off on financial proposals that other people make on the company, including some members of the family itself. We just follow this guy's life, basically, about what he gets up to in Dubai and what he feels or thinks about the culture in Dubai, and often he will go on a tangent as he remembers parts of his life before Dubai. I think it's a really good book because it has amazing humor and it is done so well. I absolutely just burst out laughing the whole time, and yet at the same time it can bring up really heavy topics such as slavery and cultural differences and relationships, and also has a really profound and unexpected ending. On number 9 we have The Vegetarian by Han Kang. When I first saw this book, I thought it was going to be about a woman's journey as she transitions to a vegetarian lifestyle. Nope. I think vegetarianism here is used mostly as a metaphor for something else. I would say something like mental health, but I'm not entirely sure. It's definitely more of a poetic story. You should definitely not take it at face value. The story follows this Korean woman who sees a nightmare one night and decides to not eat meat afterwards at all, to the point that her husband and her whole family freak out. To the point where they decide to just have some kind of intervention and almost shoves meat into her mouth forcefully, and she spits it out and becomes a complete scene. As the story goes by, we realize that there is something more sinister and probably creepier lurking underneath her reason for not wanting to eat meat anymore. The story is divided into 3 shorter stories told from 3 different point of views. The first one from her husband, the second one from her brother-in-law, and the third one from her sister. And it's really absolutely riveting, and it still haunts me to this day. Yeah. On number 8, actually, we have 2 books which I just can't separate because they're part of a series, and also I love them both equally, and I want to talk about them both at the same time. It is The Art of Loish and The Sketchbook of Loish. Yay! I got both these books from a Kickstarter project that Lois van Baarle started last year for her new book, The Sketch of Loish. But I didn't manage to get my hands on The Art of Loish on her previous Kickstarter project, so I decided to get them both as the reward. Basically, both these books talk about the development for Lois herself, from when she starts drawing at first and how she now becomes the concept artist that she is, what she learns when she was in animation school, and so on, and also her creative process from the concept to finishing, and also various tips and tricks that she would like to share with us, and tutorials as well, which I haven't tried but I'm so intrigued to. In case you don't know who Loish is, where have you been? But she is a Dutch concept artist as well as illustrator from Utrecht, Netherlands, and I've been a fan of hers since 2006. So this is really huge for me. I would recommend every illustrators or concept artists to read these two. On number 7 we have a young adult novel. I think it's the only young adult novel in this whole list. It is Wonder by R.J. Palacio. I have been wanting to read this book for years and years and years, and finally managed to do that this year after I borrowed this book from a friend of mine. And it basically tells the story of this kid named August who finally decides to go to school after being homeschooled for, well, since he's ever been educated. The problem here is that August has physical dysmorphia, which means he doesn't look like any other kids. He has various very distinct physical differences from other kids, especially in the facial region. So he doesn't really have much of a cheekbones. I think his jawbones were also like reconstructed. And the most noticeable trait is that he doesn't have ears. I mean, he doesn't have this part. I don't really know what it's called in English. And the story is told from various points of view, not just August's own, but also his sister's, and then his friends, his bully, and even his sister's boyfriend. And my favorite part is that everyone involved, like all the characters making the narration, are told in a very well-rounded way, not just in relation to their relationship to August. It's really successful in portraying the human situation or the human condition without having to dehumanize anyone. On number 6 we have The Beach by Alex Garland. You might have known about The Beach from the movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Unfortunately, I don't think Leo was supposed to cast it there at all, because he plays the main character and the main character is British. What are you doing, Hollywood? What are you anyway? So the story follows this young UK backpacker named Richard, who hasn't been home in ages, I think. One day he arrives in Thailand and starts staying in this hostel, and his room is between a Scottish man and a French couple. One day the Scottish man decides to kill himself, but not before leaving Richard a map to this secret island off the coast of Koh Samui, I think. And Richard, befriending the French couple, decide to all go together to this island, to find this island where it is. And apparently there are many Westerners there. There are many tourists or backpackers there who just want to live off the grid. Well, if in case you haven't realized, it is gonna go downhill from there. As you can tell from the cover, it is quite a thriller. I think the most eerie part about the book is the fact that by the end of it you realize that things have been going downhill for a while, but you don't know that because the narrator is so unreliable. On number 5 we have The Mothers by Bennett. Bennett. I actually wasn't planning on reading this book or buying it, but when I was traveling I had a shortage of reading materials and I thought, you know what, I'll get a book, and I got this one really quite cheap for some reason. The title, The Mothers, actually has a whole lot of layer about it in the book. There's so many types of mothers, so many versions of mothers, so many definitions of mothers in this book that really drives the story forward. The story follows this girl named Nadia, whose mother decided to kill herself when Nadia was in high school. And she got involved with the pastor's son named Luke. Things started going downhill from there. And somewhere along the way, somehow, Nadia becomes friends with the church's good girl, I suppose, named Aubrey. So after the whole thing with Luke, Nadia decides to leave her home and pursue something else in a different, bigger city. Aubrey and Luke start to have a little something. Basically, by the end of it, there is this tangle between Nadia, Luke, and Aubrey, and everything to do with what motherhood means to everyone involved. I don't know how to tell the story otherwise without really ruining the plot twists, because there are so many of them. That's all I can say about this book for now. On number 4 we have another non-fiction. This time it's Quiet by Susan Cain. Or Quiet, the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. This book really explores all layers and all dimensions of what it means to be an introvert. what powers introverts have, and how you can distinguish between extroverts and introverts. And even if they seem like extroverts, sometimes people are actually introverts. To me, this book just teaches me quite a lot, although I can also relate because I'm also a bit of an introvert, but I'm more of an ambivert, so I can't relate to all of them. I think this will be a really great book to read for extroverts especially, so they can understand what introverts go through and what they feel. Also for introverts to kind of just accept and love themselves, you know. And then on number 3 we have Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine. If there's ever a book that everyone's read and no one has ever spoken ill of, it's definitely this book. So the story follows this woman named Eleanor Elephant who works at an office, and she just has a routine to her life. She always does certain things on certain days, and she doesn't really deviate from all that. She just completely falls into a pattern of her life. And she doesn't really have any friends. She has colleagues she believes hate her, even though, to be honest, there's never any proof that they actually do. One day she meets this new colleague who happens to know how to fix her computer, and then they become friends. And then they save a stranger on the street together, and they become friends with that stranger too. And then she meets his mother and they become friends too. And slowly Eleanor's world becomes bigger and her pattern starts to get kind of distorted. Then one day she has a breakdown. Yeah. Basically this is a story about how we can go through our lives and not feel like there's anything wrong with it, like we are fine. But turns out that we aren't actually. Like, we have huge lingering deep problem in our minds. On to the second book is one of my absolute favorite reads of this year, and it's done really early in the year, which is Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. This is an environmental fiction, an ecological fiction book, and I love that it's not told from the point of view of someone who knows what the hell is going on with the ecology, but more from the point of view of people who don't know anything, who never thought about it, and start learning little by little. And the story follows this woman who one day is going over the hill to meet her lover and leave her husband and children. But then on her way there, she sees this forest, which is basically her backyard, on fire, and she just turns back and doesn't even think about it anymore. But it turns out the forest wasn't on fire. It was swarmed by thousands and thousands of monarch butterflies, which is strange because it was winter, and I don't really remember where this is set, but it's somewhere up north in the US, definitely part where winter comes. And monarch butterflies aren't supposed to be here. They're supposed to be in a warm location. Turns out the migratory pattern has been completely disrupted. Our main character here is trying to learn about the butterflies and about the migratory pattern and handle the various visitors who come there to see the butterflies, whether they're scientists or just plain tourists or activists. But at the same time, the arrival of these butterflies disrupt her life too, and she also changes and grows with the butterflies. This book has so many amazing environmental facts and very relatable stories, I think, for a lot of people who live in small towns and of low educational background. So I would definitely recommend this book. And for number 1, we have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I've been wanting to read this book for ages. Oh, finally. As you can see, this is so thick. This is thicker than Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, so that's telling something. And yet, every single page grips me. It is so hard to put this book down. And I have no idea how to tell this story because it is a complete, I would say complete mess, but it's like a collection of things and places and people and situations and plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. The first thing I want to say is that Goldfinch has similar vibe to The Lowland and 100 Years of Solitude, in which it spans for years and years and years with so many different interchangeable characters with incredible collections of stories and adventures and plots. And it is riddled with plot twists. It's insane. How do I explain this book without ruining everything? Okay, I'm just gonna tell you the first premise then. There's Theo, who's at the start of the book is 13, and he got into trouble at school, so his mother has to go to school to meet the principal, and he's coming and they're kind of being early, and so they decide to stop at this art gallery along the way to shield themselves from the rain. And she says, like, you know what, let's take a look around while we're here, because she is in love with art. So they take a look around, and then when they finished, all of a sudden her mother is like, wait, I won't need to see this thing on the other room, and can you just wait here? And okay, so Theo separates with his mom, and the bomb explodes. When Theo comes around, all he sees is like huge fog from the rubbles, and then there's this old man by his side giving him this ring, that mistaking him for someone else, and basically telling him to grab one of the paintings and pointing to a specific one, which is the Goldfinch. And Theo, in the midst of all the panic and confusion, just grabs the painting, put it in his backpack, and go home. But his mom never comes home. Having only lived with his mom, after this incident, his life is changed forever. After this, all I can say is that Theo moves from house to house to house, from friends to family and strangers, and then involved in various things that kids probably shouldn't be involved in, or things that he never thought he would ever be involved in, and things that he feels connected to for our life. What I love about this book is that everything is so incredibly well researched. There's a lot of parts about Indonesia in this book, and I'm like, whoa, I did not expect that. It has a lot of things about art and art history, antique furniture, things that I know about, and they're here, and they're so well researched. I would definitely recommend this book. There's, I think, a smaller version, like this is very, very big, but there's like a smaller addition to this book. You can get that one if you don't want to lug this one around. You will not regret ever reading this book. So good. Okay, so those are the books that I have been loving this year. I'm so lucky to have stumbled upon so many 5-star books, and these are all 5 stars in my ratings. I would recommend you read all of them, or at least some of them, and I'd like to know what you have been reading this year, what you have been loving as well. And if you want or have read any of these books, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to know what you think and discuss and stuff. On the flip side of this video, there is a blog post that talks about the worst books I've read in 2018. So if you want to have a more scandalous look, go ahead and check that out. And maybe tell me your worst reads too. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want. I'm not gonna force you. And I'll see you some other time. Bye!